I got my 190 swap done, so now all that's left is to take her for a rip.
One of the improvements Katie decided to do to this 70, when we're putting it together, is switch to the tapered bearings here in the steering stem. She bought a kit from Rocky Mountain ATV. It has 2 bearings, 2 races, and 2 seals. We had it had this old bearing race that had a bunch of these little ball bearings that are probably all lost now. They're not caged. They're kind of a pain to put back together. So we're gonna put these in tonight. So first thing we got to do is we got a bearing race here on the fork we got to knock out, and 2 bearing races right here in the frame we've got to knock out. So start by getting a screwdriver and just kind of knocking this one up. There's this bearing and there's a race and a seal on that, but we got all new, so kind of work it. Just kind of clean that up. We're gonna knock these bearings out first. So screwdriver's not long enough. Okay, take the screwdriver, just knock, broke it. Flip it over, do the same thing to this side. Tap this race in. Same with this side. Okay, those are both in. Now, just need to get a little bit of grease. Okay, we put the seal on, we're going to put the bearing on. Now we found a piece of pipe that fits over this. It's going to fit on the bearing to tap it on. Okay. Put a little bit of grease on that seal. Put a little grease around it as well. Seal will go down on top of that, and this little dust cap goes on. So I just tighten this up tight to set the bearing, and then back it off just to where there's no play in it, just so it's not stiff to turn and there's no slop in it. It's kind of just a fill for it that you just don't want any play in it, but you don't want it super duper tight either. Anyhow, that's how you put those tapered bearings in, at least how I think you do. So after threading this down and tightening it to set the bearing, it pushed this race down a little bit more, so this seal's actually working. Before we had a gap there. I was a little worried about that sealing, but so make sure you tighten that down tight to set the bearing, but then back it off so it's not stiff to turn. Anyhow, I think that'll complete it. Okay, we're going to put the rear axle bearings in. We've got them packed full of grease already. Set them in there. Make sure the end of the hammer's clean. It'd be better if we had a socket or something to fit it, but I don't. So I'm just using a tone change, and when you're pounding on it, you know it's in all the way. Got 2 new seals. Just gonna put a little grease on the seal. Okay, flip it over to the other side. Now, doing the other side, do not forget to put your spacer in there. You get the bearings pushed in there and forget to put that in, you're going to be upset. So it just sets down in there. We've packed this bearing. A little grease also. Let's do the same thing. Okay, both seals and bearings are in.
Alright, so we got the top plate on with the bar clamps, and we got the bars on. I think it's looking pretty good so far. Okay, so we got the motor out now. We're gonna get her all mounted tonight. Now we got the motor mounted, we got the 2 bolts put in.
Okay, so tonight we're going to be rebuilding the back axle on this ATC70. We're going to be doing some upgrading. So we're going to kind of go over a few things we're going to be replacing and upgrading. First off, the rear sprocket, as we showed the video before, these both broke off. All these are trashed. So Katie's purchased the aluminum sprocket hub, which allows you to put a CRF50 sprocket on it. So we're going to be getting rid of all this. All this is going away. And we're going to replace it with this. Then she's also bought these fancy axle sleeves and painted them up, which will be getting rid of these stock ones. They're just for looks. So the next thing she's purchased is the rear disc brake kit from JJ's Machine. And this is what it comes with, not with these. It comes with your master cylinder, your caliper, a hub to hold the rotor and a brake hose, and some spacers to hold the caliper, and an extra spacer to space out the silencer if you need it. So now in turn, with putting this kit on, these 70s use this little sleeve that goes right here. You're not going to use it anymore. As you can see, this one's wore out anyhow, which is pretty common. These take the place of it, so we won't be using that anymore. But anyhow, we're going to start putting this together. I think the first thing we're going to do is mount this master cylinder up on the handlebar. We need to actually mock everything up. You do have to drill one hole for this caliper, and then once we get it set up, we're going to pull the caliper back off. We're going to set it down on the ground, leave the master bolted up, and get that bled, because these can be kind of a chore to bleed. And if you can get that caliper down low, the master cylinder up high, they tend to bleed a little bit easier. So first thing we're going to do is put it together and get the hole drilled and get this caliper mounted up. Try. All right, we finally got it bled. That did take some patience. It's just a matter of working with it. We have noticed if you're watching that reservoir and just barely push this lever, not all the way in, you can see it working the air up. Then eventually slowly start to get pedal. And it'll build up and then bleed it. Just do that over and over. Just keep working with it. But it's good now. We got good pedal. It feels like it's gonna work really good. Like you barely got a pull on that, and it's really locking it up. So anyhow, really not that bad of a install. Really, to be honest with you, bleeding is probably the most difficult part.
All right, so we got this brake all hooked up now. So we're supposed to red Loctite these so then they kind of like don't come out when you're driving from like vibrations. So I'm gonna take these off just one at a time and red Loctite it, and then I got to put this on and red Loctite these onto there. So I'm gonna take this one apart and do that. So that's what's happening right now. All right, so we got both those on now and red Loctited, so now on to the next step. All right, so now we're gonna put the grab bar on and put the battery box on. So that's what's happening now. All right, got the battery box, got the battery strap, and got the grab bar on. Am I filming? I don't know. Am I?
I don't know.
Yes. All right, so we got the clutch perch, the clutch, the lever. Gavin!
I didn't do anything.
All right, so we got the clutch perch here and the clutch lever, and then we got the clutch cable all hooked up right there. Now we're just gonna put it all together so we can put it up there. And we got these on and off buttons that will hook up to the brake and the clutch that's gonna be there.
Tonight I'm gonna feel alive, and no one won't be acting nice. So baby, go and start a fight. I'm in love with the city lights.
Makes cool noises. Oh, you're recording this?
Come on! Now you messed it all up, Gavin.
Hold on, I gotta take this guy off. Because this is what's gonna be a cover on the battery. It's just it's snug. You don't want to break them seals. Because that's the job of them little ports in there.
Today I found out what I want. It's everything I never had. It's been a lifetime feeling sad, feeling sorry for the things that might make you mad. But I'm back. Who's back?
Oh. Alright, so we got the battery put in. We got both the buttons installed on the brake and the clutch. I don't have a clutch lever, so I gotta get that hooked up still, but gotta go buy one. But that's what we have set up for the handlebars. Alright, so now that the WeatherTech stuff is like dried, we're gonna grab the wheel and just kind of set it over top. And then you're gonna grab this and kind of line it up with the squares. And then we'll grab the bolts, and I always make sure that this is facing the side that the valve stem is on. Okay. Now I'm just gonna flip it and fill it up with air and see if it holds. And then sometimes you can kind of be careful if it didn't seal, but it looks like this one is sealing. So simple as that. Alright, so we got the back wheels on with the spacers. I think she's looking pretty good so far. We got the front fender on. And now we're gonna get, so the billet pegs just gonna go on the front axle, and they kind of just thread through the front tires, so that's what we're about to do. Alright, so we got a new clutch lever. She's all hooked up. Gavin! You're... Alright, so got the new clutch lever, so she's on now. So we got both the brake and the clutch working. I just threw the plastics and the tank on just to see what she looked like. She's looking pretty good. Alright, so we put a new sprocket on right here, and then we put a new wheel on the chain tensioner. So she's looking pretty good so far.
Wow, that's pretty neat.
Okay, so tonight we're trying to make the intake fit on Katie's three-wheeler here. The problem is with these intakes is the carburetor hits the gas tank when it bolts up here. So we have to cut the intake. So what I've done is I've cut it in half. This is how I do it. I'm not saying this is the only right way, but I've cut it in half, and I'm gonna grind it so we can pivot that carburetor down. We grind these cooling fins right here off the head to get the carb down. I'm backwards, but get the carb down that much further so it'll clear the tank. And you still do end up sometimes denting the tank in a little bit too with the stock tank. So anyhow, we're gonna grind these cooling fins down. Then I'm gonna grind this intake different angles till the carburetor fits correct, and then we'll weld it back together. Okay, officially ground the crap out of this head, or cylinder I mean. If you look, I've almost got them ground down to not much there. But I've cut and been grinding on this intake to the point now I can weld it. It's right close to here, but the choke lever barely clears the tank. The whole carb clears it now. So now we just gotta weld it, which could be the fun part. So I'm not gonna say I'm a great TIG welder. In fact, I've done it very little, but we're gonna get it done anyhow. So I'm just gonna get Katie to hold this in place while I tack it and put it on the bench and weld it, and hopefully it still all clears. Okay, so I got this intake all welded together. Like I say, I'm not claiming to be a great TIG welder, but I got it back together. As you can see, that carburetor all but touches the bottom of the cylinder. It's really close, but it clears the tank. The choke lever, I took a little bit off the choke lever. It's super tight, but you can get your fingers up behind the tank once it's on and lift it up. So anyhow, the carb's on there now. We're gonna start on the wiring. So first thing, a couple things I've done is everything that plugs in, I've just plugged in so far. So the CDI box plugs in. These plugs plug into the connector coming out of the engine. This, I don't know if it's a regulator or whatever, it plugs in. So I plugged all that in, and I've routed the wire that hooks on the starter, comes up, and it's gonna hook to one side of the solenoid. The other side of the solenoid is gonna be basically your positive battery cable, which is gonna go over to the battery. Haven't hooked it up yet. Then you got your negative hooked to the battery. We need to find a spot on the engine to ground it. Now, there's a good part of this stuff you don't need. So my next step is to sift through some of this and see what we can get rid of and what we need, and go from there. So I'm gonna start kind of cutting through this, and I'll explain what I end up taking out and not using. Choke is gonna be no fun.
Awesome.
Not liking it.
Alright, so today I got my decals in the mail. These are gonna, I have two of these that are gonna go on each side of the tank, and then this one's gonna go on the rear fender. So I brought these inside in my mother's kitchen, and I'm gonna, because it's kind of cold outside still, and I got the grease and wax remover that I use for the paint, and I just kind of put it on the rag and wipe it on here to kind of just make sure it's a clean surface. And then I dry it off, and then I'm gonna use this application fluid stuff. I'm gonna spray it onto the plastic, and then I'm also gonna take the sticker off and spray it on the back of it because it allows you to kind of move it around. And then once I get to the place, I'm gonna blow dry it and kind of get all the bubbles out. So yeah. Alright, so we finished the plastic, so now we're gonna do it to the tank. So this is the wax and grease remover again. Just kind of cleaning it up real good. And wiping it off. Just kind of making sure that's nice and clean. Alright, so I figured out which one goes where. This one's gonna go on this side, and then this one is reversed, so it's gonna go on the other side. So we're gonna take that application again, spray it on there real good. Grab this sticker. I'm gonna spray that. Place it on here, and I'm gonna try to figure out I got my 190 swap done, so now all that's left is to take her for a rip.